Finance Officer and his team, we're giving him a hard time, come forward and talk about the capital plan. The team has been working on this. I appreciate Ms. Leanne Evans for constantly teaching me about this and educating me as I understand how we build out the capital plan. And then obviously Ms. Paul, who was charged with executing on the projects that the board determines are a priority. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the award-winning Mike Burke.
Getting a lot of mileage out of that award. Thank you, Dr. Fenoy.
Enjoy it before we forget.
It'll be fleeting, I know. First, so Ms. Evans, to my right here, has done a lot of work over the last several months to compile a comprehensive capital budget. The capital budget is spread across a few departments in our district, with, of course, facilities, IT, and then ET, educational technology, school police, and a few others. So it takes a concerted effort. You may recall, we were fortunate to have the penny sales tax, of which we get 50%. And even actually before that was approved, we expanded our capital plan. We used to do a 5-year plan. We've gone to a 10-year plan so that we can encompass the entire duration of that sales tax levy. And the bulk of our plan really dates back to that 2016 referendum spending plan. So we're making good on that promise to address all the deferred maintenance. And, that's a lot of it's not real glamorous work, but it's fixing our roofs and our HVAC and all that good stuff, and rolling out a lot of classroom technology. So that's all occurring. I'd like to thank Ms. Paul for her willingness to work with us and help prioritize spending. We do have some challenges with rising cost, and she has by far the biggest share of this capital budget. And, money can often be a source of friction in a relationship, and Ms. Paul and I have not let finances divide us. We have a rule. We never leave work angry at each other at the end of the day, and that has served us well.
So why did you put Ms. Evans between the two of you today?
To get out of smacking distance. But anyway, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Evans to take us through our presentation.
Okay, that's a great start. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so we had a workshop back in May and prepared a capital budget at that point that was balanced and a capital plan. We went through it all, and there were some legislative changes that impacted the capital plan. So we have a new version of it. And this first slide is really just to go over the significant changes since you saw it last. So we have added the construction of Sunset Palms Middle 17 PP has been moved up. Design is in FY20 and construction in 21. And we had added a modular addition for K-8. That's been taken out. It's no longer needed. For Delray Full Service and Roosevelt, we've kept the design money in FY20, but moved the construction to 21 and 22. That's just when we think the construction is going to work. It's going to start, so we don't have cash sitting there unnecessary. We're using it and making sure the money is being used when it's budgeted. Core expansions, there's several of those, and those budgets have been increased because they're not just renovations, they're actually additions going on. And that was really a misunderstanding on my part on the scope of the project. So they've all been increased a little bit, up to $5 million apiece. And then Triple O, as we call it, has been expanded to 2,500 student stations with construction starting, and we have the design, everything happening in 20, and construction really coming in 21. So overall, this is an overall review of the capital budget. I've got a chart showing how it's split up. The significant enhancements in this budget, and this is looking at the whole 10 years. Again, Sunset Palms Middle. We've added a remodeling project for the remaining the buildings that are going to remain at Old Plumosa. Sales tax is funding the demolition of old buildings, but there are some newer ones that we need to keep. Those will be renovated and used for South Intensive. We've increased the funding for air conditioning replacements, funded with a 5-year borrowing in FY20, and another will be coming in 21, and that should take care of all the backlog of air conditioners at that point. We've increased funding for computers. We have a lot of computers that have a Windows 7 operating system that's no longer supported by the end of January, so there's a lot of computers being rolled out throughout the district right now. Money for some remodeling in this building, a budget development system, the Wi-Fi on school buses that I know has been discussed a lot, and the increased funding for musical instruments has been rolled out to all the schools.
Let me ask you a quick question. So on the increased funding for HVAC replacements funded with 5-year borrowing, how soon can you start that, since we're borrowing other money, we don't have to wait for sales tax money to come in?
Well, there's two components. Air conditioners are being replaced either with the sales tax, and in that case, we're moving those up based on the pace facilities is telling us, and you approved a revolving line of credit a month or two ago. That's already in place, and we're running with those. This is a separate lease purchase for additional air conditioners that were not included in the facility condition assessment. It wasn't part of the sales tax. So you actually have that on your agenda tonight to approve, and I'm hoping to get you and Dr. Frenoy, assuming it's approved tonight, to sign it the first week of September. We close on September 6th. And then maintenance is queued up and ready to go. They've already walked the campuses, so that work will happen very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk about was cost per student stationed. There was some legislative changes that caused a lot of confusion throughout the state, so I wanted to make sure we touched base on this. Cost per student station applies to new schools, modernizations, and additions that are adding student stations. So it doesn't impact remodeling or renovation. It doesn't impact the core additions that don't have student stations. It's only when it's classrooms that it becomes very important. The changes that happened was to adjust the list of reportable costs. So they've taken out all site work instead of just the things along the roadways. Now it's the entire site work, as well as legal and admin costs, and most security-related costs are no longer part of the calculation. That makes a big difference for us in Palm Beach County. Everyone interpreted these costs differently, and I think this is going to help put everybody on a level playing field. The second thing was the elimination of the requirement to comply with cost per student stations under a couple of circumstances. One is the project had to be funded with COPS. Most of our construction fund projects are funded with COPS, so immediately all the contractors are very excited. They think we don't have to comply. But part two is the COPS proceeds, the borrowing can only be used for the pay for the portion of the project that is in compliance with cost per student station. So anything in excess of that has to be funded either with sales tax, GO bonds, impact fees, or donations. So we don't have GO bonds. We do have a sales tax. That money's all spoken for very specific projects. Impact fees are really used only for projects to accommodate growth. So if you're doing a modernization and it's not adding extra student stations, that doesn't work there. So this does help us and provide relief for new schools and additions that are adding student stations, but it's limited and it doesn't work for most of our modernizations. We are working on those modernizations and in many cases dividing them into two projects. One is for the renovation and remodeling of existing buildings, and a second project for the new ones, for the new schools that is subject to cost per student station. That's giving us some more flexibility. We're rolling them together in the 5-year plan, but behind the scenes we're tracking them separately so that when the Auditor General comes to audit, as they are required to do by state law, we can easily break the projects out. Okay, then the next thing that is a problem with that is the COPS. We are maxed as to how much we can borrow right now. Our policy has a goal that no more than 50% of the local capital outlay millage is used for debt service on COPS. We will be slightly over in FY21 and 22 based on the projects in the capital plan. So when I get a call asking if we can add another project in, I'm telling everyone 23 or later. You can see the chart and it shows we do have capacities. We move a little bit further along, but we're really very close to our limit and going over it slightly. As we bring these COPS issues to you, I will bring it in and tell you specifically where we think we'll be. Hopefully the bond market's cooperating very nicely. We will have a COPS issue coming into you soon, and hopefully we can get things at lower interest rates than we're projecting, and that will help. But we're right at the cusp of being over that budget if we're not slightly over. So we don't have a lot of room to add a lot of projects in the short term.
Question. So if we go a little bit over, we're violating policy, so what will you do? Will you ask us to increase it for that year, to change the policy, or are you going to, how will you, we don't want to violate policy.
No, the policy, actually, I have to thank the Finance Committee, because originally the language was you could not exceed it. And the Finance Committee said, no, make it a goal. It's not a hard and fast rule, it's a goal. Okay. So you can go over it. I want to make sure that you're aware when we go over that goal. And if it's only for 1 or 2 years, that's not something the rating agency should get concerned about. We can see there's clear relief in the chart. It's going to be a short-term issue, but we want to keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shaw.
While we're on that one, can you what is the possibility of any refinancing that we've done in the past? And
We actually have some good news with this. You know that the federal government eliminated advance refundings for tax-exempt debt a year ago. So I haven't come to you with any refundings. If you're paying attention to the markets at all, you're seeing a lot of the news about municipal bonds and the municipal debt market, and the interest rates have dropped significantly. We actually have some proposals that have come in recently to do advance refundings by taking our tax-exempt debt and switching it to taxable, which normally you'd never want to do. Tax-exempt debt has a higher interest rate, but the rates have dropped so much that we will have some significant savings with some of those. So we're working to get that information together and hope to take it to the Finance Committee on September 24th and bring it into the school board as quickly as possible if the market holds. Markets are really acting strange right now, so I can't guarantee it would stay, but there is a possibility we may have a refunding to bring to you in the near future. And that's hot off the presses.
I just want to remind everyone, too, that Ms. Evans worked hard, that we knew that deadline was coming about no longer being able to refinance, and we did a whole lot of transactions in a short amount of time to take advantage of refinancing before the federal restriction was in place.
So there may be some good news coming. I'll keep you all informed as we get a little further along the way. So the debt service budget does comprise about $1.8 billion. These numbers throughout this presentation are for a 10-year window. So they seem very large, but again, we're looking at 10 years. The construction projects, $750 million of them. The referendum projects are shown in italics. And then the new projects or the ones that have changed are shown in bold. So this looks very similar to what you saw back in May. The facilities projects, this is really everything else the facilities team does. So you have the facility renewal projects, that's sales tax, that's $88 million over the next 7 or 8 years. Other facility projects will include things like air conditioning and roofing. Facilities maintenance is the day-to-day maintaining of our facilities, and then there's some money out there for site acquisition and leasing. The leasing is actually part of the referendum project list, so that's something we're monitoring. There are 3 additions that were originally shown under additions, but since they're really modulars that are being moved to a campus, we're categorizing them with the modular relocations, but those 3 projects are still in the capital plan. Security, all the security money from the sales tax has been moved up into FY20. So all of it is available to the school police and facilities to get that work done as quickly as the market will allow. That money, these dollars are very similar to what you saw before, and technology does include, as we mentioned before, an increase to replace computers over the next 2 years due to some changes in Windows 7 versus Windows 10. Transportation and equipment, there's $216 million for school buses and maintenance, and $78 million for equipment. That doesn't include the increased budget for musical instruments. Other capital items, the property and flood insurance, that has been increased based on what we're hearing from Ms. Howard about the insurance market. We've increased it a bit. The reserves have gone down a little bit. And again, most of those reserves are in the last 2 or 3 years of the capital plan. There's not a large amount of money sitting there now, but there is a lot coming in year 9 and 10. By the time we get to year 9 and 10, I doubt that money will be there. We'll be using it for something. And charter schools, this year's money for charter schools is funded by the state, but all the future years we have in the capital plan is being funded locally. Hopefully the legislature will continue to fully fund charters, but to be conservative, we want to make sure that money is set aside in the budget. We have some project recommendations that are still being developed. The possible conservatory high school. Again, that's looking for construction added in year 3 or later. It's going to depend on the cost of the project and our borrowing capacity. And North Tech, that's looking at River Beach Prep and Inlet Grove. There is money in the facility renewal project that's part of the sales tax earmarked for those 2 schools. We're just looking at the best way to use it. We may, instead of doing a lot of maintenance, do some new buildings. So that's something that we're still working on. And then the other things we just wanted to make sure you're aware of, the charter school funding, that certainly could change if the state continues to fund it. That's some extra money that we have every year to work with. Impact fees may increase additionally. We have some of the increase factored into the budget, not all of it at this point. There is a second review of impact fees starting this year. So we loaded in what we know we'll be receiving, and hopefully this time next year we'll bump impact fees up again. We're using the current numbers that are provided by Palm Beach County at this point. Legislative changes, we'll continue to monitor that. There is still one pending change on cost per student station. As of January 1, we're supposed to have a new index for that. Instead of the consumer price index, we'll have something new. We don't know what that is yet, so it's something we're monitoring. Additional needs for maintenance, that's something we're paying attention to. Increased funding for computers to reach that 1-to-1 ratio, that's something I'm hoping to bring into the next capital plan that you see this time next year. So if we have that extra money from charters that we don't have to pay for charter schools, that may be used to increase the number of computers so we can get to a 1-to-1 ratio. Rising computer construction costs is a significant concern. We're seeing numbers coming higher on every project, so that's something that you'll be hearing more about as we continue to award construction projects. And I just always like to end to make sure we're aware that all the sales tax money is dedicated to deal with specific projects on that project list. So as we build the plan, that's the first thing that gets filled in, and then we look at what else we can achieve with the dollars that are available. With that, I'll just point out the next meeting will be September 4th. That'll be final budget adoption. You'll adopt the capital plan first and then the budget. And that'll be at 5:05 on September 4th. With that, I'd open it up for any questions or discussion.
Questions? So let me ask you, one on slide 7, you have modular additions at 3 schools that happen to be in District 5, Olympic Heights, Omni, and Spanish River, and I'm fine with modular additions because the schools are getting overcrowded, but can the core facilities handle the extra students if we add those modular additions on, or are we planning for?
That's definitely something we have to look at as we go forward. The reality is that we do have an excess of concretables in the district, so this is the best way to apply that expansion or to do the expansion. But we do have to circle back and look at those core expansions, just as we're doing for the elementary schools.
Okay, and
We
what
have that same challenge currently in some of our elementary schools that where their population has increased. And so one of the items in the list that Leanne discussed dealt with core expansions. So right now, there's no money dedicated to that, but that's something we definitely have to look at as we go forward.
And especially Calusa, which has 1,250 students, and it's way over capacity. Those kids start eating lunch, I think, at 10 o'clock in the morning and finish up before they go home. So, I mean, we have to look at some way to relieve that school. Hopefully, O5C, when it's built, will take, with some changes in boundaries, will take some of those kids. But
I believe so, yes. I think that's what the projection shows.
okay, great. Ms. Brill and then Mrs. Andrews.
Well, and I don't know what the time frame you're talking about is, but once you build that Sunset Palms Middle School, Krista McAuliffe has a lot of portables that will become available.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you, and that was my question about portables. I'm really happy with the work that you all did at Wellington Landings. We're pleased, and the community is pleased. But, you know, they're concerned about many of the children still sitting in those portables back there. You have a portable veal sort of out in the back there. That area was back there way back in the day, you know, and so parents say, well, why do we continually have to have our kids in these portables? Same thing at a lot of the other schools as I'm looking at. When I looked at Bear Lakes Middle School, I don't know when you all did that wonderful addition back, that really is the same type of school that my Wellington Landing School is. So are we just now going to they're going to be stuck in all of these portables for a lifetime, or do we have a plan to do better?
So when you talk about concretables, those are permanent capacity. So they have a life cycle just like a school does. Mm-hmm. So until they expend the life cycle, we're not allowed to do anything but repair. We can't just move them. We can't replace them. You know, that's a DOE requirement. So we have to make sure that we keep them operational. And that's about what we can do to them. In terms of if we still have wooden portables, and we still do, then our plan is to demo those. We have been doing that for the past probably 2 years since I've been here, to get rid of them because they truly have lived their useful life. So in terms of what options we have with concretables, really the only thing, as I said before, we can do is repair, paint, and make sure that there's no water intrusion, those kind of things.
And I'll be getting back with you because I have had some concerns from the community about some of the areas where those portables are. And I'll do my own due diligence to check and see if they're the wooden ones, the concretables or whatever. But parents are saying, well, why do our kids have to stay in this condition? So I'll be talking with you offline. Thank you.
All right, I have we got a statement in from Dr. Robinson, so she'd like me to read it into the record. I thought it best to not spread my cold, and therefore I'm not in attendance. However, I wish to express my pleasure to see slide 11, which deals with the Conservatory High School and North Tech. First, I'm thrilled at the possibility of facility investment to support the outstanding educational program at the Conservatory School. I fully support adding planning dollars for TCS, the Conservatory School, and the capital plan, followed by additional square footage for the school. Secondly, it is time that we address the facility needs of both Riviera Beach Prep and Inlet Grove. The condition of these facilities ranks amongst the worst in the county. Each of these three programs serves an important purpose filling that is not addressed in our other programming. I look forward to creative solutions for the Conservatory School, Riviera Beach Prep, and Inlet Grove. So, Mrs. Paul, can you address those issues with respect to Riviera Beach Prep and Inlet Grove?
So I think as Mr. Burke and Leanne had said, Evans had said previously, there are dollars in deferred maintenance as well as sales tax money for these two schools. So one of the scenarios is to look at, does it make sense to put money into these old buildings, or is it more palatable to actually build a new building? And my preference always is to build a new building. So that's kind of what we're looking at this time. As Mike Burke said, we have about $30 million combined for this, and so that's what we will be exploring as we go forward.
So when you say exploring it, are you going to bring it back to us soon with some ideas on what you plan on doing at some time? I'm just asking for Dr. Robinson. I'm not sure.
No.
She wants me to ask these questions, but.
No, I understand, and yes, we will.
Okay, great. Mrs. Andrews?
And thank you. And it just brings me to say thank you. I saw South Area Intensive in here. Oh, that is a good thing that you finally put some money in there for South Area Intensive. So I'm also asking about Crossroads because the superintendent said he had some wonderful things that he was going to do to spruce up Crossroads. So can you help me?
Yes, and we've already started that. I know we placed a new building out there. We're also working with our police department, Chief Kitzrow, to add additional security measures out there and stuff. So that's definitely high on our priority list, and we will continue to work with the school to make sure that they have what they need.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the board will now participate in an attorney-client session, which will open and close here in the public, but the actual session is closed, so we need a motion to close the workshops. Motion by Mr. Shaw, second by Mrs. Andrews. All in favor, all opposed, motion carries. Mrs. Rico?